You've been told since childhood that if you're nice, people will like you, that if you smile, if you agree, if you're polite enough, the world will open its doors for you. And for most men, this becomes the foundation of how they approach women. If I am nice to her, she will like me. But let's pause here and look deeper. Does that actually work? Or is it the very thing that keeps you in the friend zone? The invisible category of safe, harmless, forgettable. Here's the harsh truth: niceness does not equal attraction. Being nice is a social requirement, not a romantic magnet. Think about it. Would you ever say, I'm going to marry her because she's nice? Of course not. Nice is expected. It's the baseline of human decency. You don't get credit for being nice, just like you don't get applause for brushing your teeth. It's something everyone should be doing. Yet, so many men have been conditioned to believe that niceness is a personality trait that will set them apart. It doesn't. It makes you blend in with the countless other men who orbit around a woman's life, all offering the same thing: validation without value. Women don't fall in love with nice, they fall in love with strong. They fall in love with presence, with courage, with direction, with the kind of energy that shakes them out of their comfort zone and makes them feel something. Nice doesn't make a woman's heart race. Nice doesn't stir up desire. Nice doesn't create polarity. Nice is predictable, and predictability is boring. Attraction lives in the space of tension, polarity, excitement, and yes, even danger. Niceness kills all of that. And here's the deeper psychological truth. When a man hides behind niceness, it's rarely about kindness, it's about fear. Fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, fear of showing his real self. So instead of taking risks, he plays safe. He thinks, if I don't offend her, if I always agree, if I always support, maybe she'll see me as the good guy, the boyfriend material. But women are not stupid. They feel the energy behind your actions. They know when you're being nice because you genuinely respect them, versus when you're being nice because you're terrified of losing their approval. One builds respect, the other builds contempt. Now let's go a layer deeper. Philosophically, niceness without strength is empty. It's not virtue, it's weakness pretending to be virtue. Think about history's greatest leaders, thinkers, or revolutionaries. Were they just nice? No, they were strong, assertive, often polarizing. They stood for something. They had the courage to disagree, to confront, to demand better. Niceness alone is passive. It is reactive, not proactive. And women, especially those who are attractive and high value, don't want a man who lives in reaction. They want a man who leads with vision, with certainty, with grounded strength. Let's use a metaphor. Imagine you're walking through a forest and you see two trees. One is tall, firm, unshakable. The other is weak, bending at every gust of wind, fragile, delicate. Which one do you feel safer under? Which one commands respect? The strong one, of course. Women feel the same way about men. Niceness is the flimsy tree. Strength with kindness is the oak tree. And that's the real difference. Being kind while also being unshakable is powerful. Being only nice is forgettable. Hot women in particular, women who live with constant attention, who hear compliments all day, who are surrounded by men willing to bend over backwards for them, they are even more immune to the charms of nice. Why? Because they've seen it 1,000 times. Niceness doesn't impress them, it exhausts them. When every man is offering the same cheap currency of over-complimenting, over-texting, over-giving, what value does it hold? It's like monopoly money, plentiful but worthless. What makes a man stand out is his refusal to use nice as his only currency. He brings confidence, ambition, a sense of humor, a spine that's valuable. And let's not misunderstand this. I'm not saying you should be cruel, arrogant, or disrespectful. No, true strength doesn't need to crush others to prove itself. But strength without fear of disapproval, that's what women respond to. When a man can look at a beautiful woman and say no when he means no, when he can disagree with her without fear, when he can set boundaries without apologizing, that's when she feels respect. And where there is respect, attraction follows. The problem with nice guys is that they confuse kindness with compliance. They think love is earned by being endlessly agreeable. But love is not earned through self-erasure. It's earned through authenticity, through courage, through being someone who values himself enough not to bend for every smile, every compliment, every passing glance. So let me leave you with this. Being nice is not a crime, but it is not a strategy. If you want attraction, you must offer something greater than the baseline. You must cultivate strength, confidence, and a sense of self that cannot be shaken by rejection. Women don't hate nice guys because they're nice, they hate them because they are weak. And weakness, in the language of desire, is the ultimate repellent. Closing line: stop trying to be liked for your niceness. Start being respected for your strength. Because in the end, it's not your nice that she craves, it's your power. When you look at a very attractive woman, you have to understand something that most men refuse to accept. She lives in a different reality than you. A beautiful woman does not walk through life the way an average man does. The moment she steps outside, she is noticed. She is evaluated, admired, complimented, chased. Her inbox is flooded with messages. Her phone is filled with attention. Men are offering her dinners, trips, money, favors every single day. This is not theory, this is her lived reality. Now here's the point most men don't see. When a woman has this many options, her filter for men becomes sharper. She doesn't just fall for the first guy who's nice to her. She doesn't even notice him. Why would she? If 100 men are nice to her today, what makes the 101st special? Nothing. He becomes invisible. And this is where the frustration of nice guys begins. They think, I'm doing everything right, I'm treating her well. Why doesn't she choose me? The answer is simple: she already has dozens, if not hundreds, of men treating her that way. Nice has no currency in a world where it is in infinite supply. From a psychological perspective, human beings don't value what is abundant. We value what is scarce. Scarcity creates desire. If you walk into a jewelry store and see a diamond labeled one of a kind, your attention sharpens. You want it more, not because of what it is, but because you know it cannot be easily replaced. The same principle applies to dating. A hot woman knows that niceness is abundant, but true strength, authentic presence, masculine leadership, that is rare. That's the diamond, and that's why she chooses it. Let me make this even clearer. When men complain that attractive women only go for confident guys, what they're really saying is, I can't compete in a world where she has options. But the truth is, options don't make her shallow, they make her selective. And why shouldn't she be? If you were offered the choice between a mediocre job and a high-paying, fulfilling one, would you not choose the better option? Nobody blames you for being selective when you have multiple offers on the table. Yet men blame women for doing the same with relationships. The problem is not that she has options. The problem is that most men don't know how to rise above the noise of the crowd. They think showing up with flowers, compliments, or undying attention will set them apart. But that's exactly what every other man is already doing. What sets you apart is your ability to bring something she cannot get from anyone else. That might be emotional strength, a clear vision for your life, unshakable self-respect, or the ability to lead her into experiences she's never had before. Philosophically, this speaks to a deeper truth about desire. Attraction is not about fairness, it's about hierarchy. And hierarchy exists in every area of life. Not every man gets to be a CEO. Not every artist gets to be world famous. Not every athlete makes it to the Olympics. Why? Because the higher the prize, the tougher the competition. A hot woman is a high value prize in the sexual marketplace, and with higher value comes higher competition. If you are not ready to compete at that level, don't complain when she overlooks you. Improve yourself until you stand out. This is where many men get bitter, that they look at attractive women and say, she's shallow, she only goes for certain guys. But bitterness is nothing more than resentment toward reality. The truth is, beauty multiplies options, and options demand higher standards. If you want access to that world, you must be willing to play at that level. And playing at that level doesn't mean pretending to be someone you're not. It means becoming the kind of man who naturally commands respect and attention. A man who doesn't beg for her time, but whose time is already so valuable that she feels lucky to share it. Another mistake men make is thinking that hot women want perfection. They don't. What they want is authenticity combined with strength. They want a man who doesn't collapse under the pressure of their beauty. Think about this: if she is constantly admired, constantly worshipped, constantly pursued, what happens to her perception of herself? She becomes used to it. Beauty becomes normal, so when you come in and treat her like she's a goddess, she doesn't feel special. She feels bored. What makes her feel something is the rare man who sees beyond her beauty, who challenges her, who treats her like a human being but never like a pedestal. And let's be real, options also expose weak men very quickly. When a woman has choices, She can spot insecurity, neediness, and desperation within seconds. She has seen it thousands of times before. But when she meets a man who is calm, grounded, self-assured, suddenly that energy cuts through the noise. That is what she notices. That is what makes her stop and think, this one is different. So the question is not, why do hot women have so many options? The question is, what makes me different enough to rise above those options? And the answer will never be niceness. It will always be your ability to offer something rare, something valuable, something that cannot be copied by the countless other men chasing her. The more options she has, the more ruthless her selection becomes. And instead of fearing that reality, you should be grateful for it, because it forces you to grow. It forces you to become sharper, stronger, more authentic. Without that pressure, most men would remain mediocre forever. Closing line, stop resenting her options and start becoming the option she can't ignore. Because the truth is, but the competition isn't going away, but neither is your ability to rise above it. One of the biggest misconceptions men carry is this idea that endless niceness will eventually win a woman over. They think the more accommodating they are, the more available they become, the more approval they seek, the more attractive they'll appear. But what they don't realize is that niceness without boundaries doesn't read as kindness, it reads as weakness. And weakness, no matter how politely it is wrapped, is unattractive. Let's be clear here. Kindness is powerful. Empathy, generosity, compassion, these are noble traits. But when they exist without strength, when they are not grounded in self-respect, they transform into something else entirely. They become compliance, they become submission. They become an inability to stand up for yourself. And women, especially high-value women, don't respect men who cannot respect themselves. Think about it from a psychological lens. A person's boundaries are an extension of their self-worth. If you do not enforce your boundaries, what you are communicating to the world without saying a word is that you do not believe your needs, your time, or your energy matter. And if you don't value those things, why should anyone else? Women are incredibly perceptive about this. They may not articulate it consciously, but they sense it immediately. They can feel when a man is bending over backwards just to keep their attention. They can feel when he is terrified of saying no. They can feel when his so-called niceness is actually just fear of losing her. Now, ask yourself this. How can a woman trust a man who cannot even protect his own boundaries? If he cannot defend himself, how will he defend her? If he cannot stand firm against her tests, her moods, her challenges, how will he stand firm against life's pressures? A man without boundaries is like a house without walls. There is no safety, no structure, no security. And no matter how nice that house looks, no one wants to live in it. This is where so many nice guys go wrong. They think women want someone who will agree with everything, tolerate everything, and forgive everything. But what women actually crave is someone who has a backbone. Someone who can say, this is what I will allow and this is what I will not. It's not about being controlling or harsh. It's about having self-respect. Without self-respect, you cannot demand respect from others. Philosophically, let's take this deeper. Weak niceness is not virtue. It is vice dressed up as virtue. True virtue requires strength. It is easy to be nice when you have no standards, when you have no boundaries, when you never risk conflict. But that's not virtue, that's avoidance. Real kindness comes from a place of choice, not fear. It says, I could stand up for myself, I could walk away, I could demand better, but I choose to give, I choose to forgive, I choose to be patient. That is strength, that is virtue. Anything else is cowardice pretending to be goodness. And women test men for this all the time, consciously or not. They will push against your limits to see if you actually have any. They'll cancel plans last minute. They'll flirt with other guys in front of you. They'll disrespect your time. They're not always doing this because they're cruel. They're doing it because they want to feel your strength. They want to know that you will not allow yourself to be walked over. And when you fail these tests, when you smile and pretend everything is fine, when you swallow your frustration just to stay nice, you think you're winning her approval, but in reality, you're losing her respect. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine a man who takes a woman on a date. She shows up 30 minutes late without even apologizing. The nice guy will smile, pretend it doesn't bother him, and say, it's okay, no problem. But deep down, it does bother him. He just doesn't have the courage to express it. The strong man, on the other hand, will call it out. not with anger, but with firmness. He might say, I value my time, and I expect the same from the people I spend it with. That statement alone shifts the entire dynamic. It communicates self-respect, standards, and strength. Which man do you think she'll feel attracted to? This is the paradox most men never grasp. The very thing they are afraid to show, their boundaries, their standards, their ability to say no, is the very thing that creates attraction. Women don't want a man who is endlessly available. They want a man who is selectively available. They want a man whose time, attention, and energy are valuable enough that he protects them. They want a man who gives, but never from a place of desperation. At the deepest level, this all comes down to one principle: respect cannot exist without boundaries, and love cannot exist without respect. If she doesn't respect you, and she cannot truly love you, and she cannot respect you if you refuse to respect yourself. So the next time you think being endlessly nice will win her over, remember this: niceness without boundaries is weakness, and weakness repels attraction. True kindness is powerful only when it is paired with strength. A man who gives from a place of abundance, a man who loves without fear, a man who says yes when he means yes and no when he means no. That is the man she desires. Closing line: stop trying to keep her by being endlessly nice. Start keeping yourself by enforcing your boundaries. Because the man who respects himself first is always the man she will respect most. One of the greatest misunderstandings men have about attraction is thinking that constant affection, constant availability, and constant approval will win a woman's heart. They believe that if they smother her with attention, if they make her the center of their universe, if they prove how loyal and committed they are from day one, she will feel secure and fall in love. But that's not how attraction works. In fact, it has the opposite effect, because what a woman craves is polarity, the spark, the tension, the dynamic energy between masculine and feminine. Puppy love, where a man chases her like a child desperate for candy, kills that spark. Let's break this down. Polarity is the principle that opposites create energy. Just as a magnet requires a positive and negative charge, relationships require the dance of masculine and feminine energy. When a man shows up as strong, decisive, and grounded, it allows a woman to lean into her softness, her receptivity, her playfulness. That tension creates desire. It's what makes her heartbeat quicken when he enters the room. It's what makes her trust him enough to follow his lead. Without polarity, relationships collapse into neutrality, and neutrality is the death of attraction. Now, puppy love destroys polarity because it flips the dynamic upside down. When a man behaves like a fan instead of a leader, constantly texting, constantly complimenting, constantly seeking reassurance, he steps into the feminine role of needing, yearning, and waiting for validation. And unconsciously, he pushes the woman into the masculine role, where she feels like she has to lead, guide, and carry the dynamic. For a hot woman especially, this feels suffocating. She doesn't want another fan. She already has thousands. She wants a man who holds his masculine frame so firmly that she can finally relax into her femininity. From a psychological perspective, this makes sense. Desire thrives in uncertainty. It thrives in tension. The unknown excites us because it challenges us. It forces us to wonder, to imagine, to anticipate. When a man gives away everything up front, his emotions, his availability, his devotion, he kills that uncertainty. He removes all mystery. He hands her the script and says, "Here, you already know how this story ends." And the moment she knows exactly how the story ends, she stops being excited to read it. Think of it like fire. Fire requires oxygen to burn. Too much closeness, too much smothering, and the flame dies. A healthy relationship has rhythm, closeness and space, intimacy and distance, giving and withholding. That rhythm is what keeps the flame alive. Puppy love eliminates rhythm. It's constant closeness, constant availability, constant surrender. And that's why the flame goes out. Philosophically, let's take this deeper. Puppy love is not love at all. It is attachment disguised as love. True love is a choice made from strength. Puppy love is an addiction fueled by weakness. When a man chases a woman obsessively, what he's really chasing is not her, but his own fear of being alone. He's not leading with love, he's leading with emptiness. And emptiness is never attractive. Women want to feel that you desire them, yes, but they also want to feel that your life does not collapse without them. They want to see that your love is rooted in abundance, not desperation. Let's put this in a practical example. Imagine a woman dating two men. The first one texts her 20 times a day, asks where she is at all hours, showers her with compliments, and tells her she's the best thing that ever happened to him within a week of meeting her. The second one desires her, yes, but he's focused on his goals, his passions, his mission. He gives her attention, but not all of it. He values her, but he doesn't worship her. He challenges her when she's wrong. He leads when decisions need to be made, and he maintains his identity outside the relationship. Which one do you think she feels real attraction for? It's always the second, not because he's colder, but because his strength allows for polarity. His masculine energy allows her to feel feminine, playful, safe, and desired. This is where so many men fail. They confuse attention with attraction. They think the more attention they give, the more attraction they will build, but attraction doesn't grow in the soil of constant approval. It grows in the tension of polarity. Women want to feel pulled into a man's orbit, not smothered by his neediness. They want to feel his strength, not his desperation. They want to feel chosen, not worshipped. At its core, this is about balance. You cannot create polarity if you collapse your identity into hers, if you abandon your goals, your friendships, your mission, your self-respect, and make her your entire purpose. You kill the very attraction you are trying to build. Because the moment she realizes she is your only source of fulfillment, she feels burdened, not loved. And here's the paradox: the more you make her your world, the more she wants to escape it. The more you make your own world, rich with purpose, ambition, and strength, the more she wants to be a part of it. That is polarity. That is the dance that keeps her coming back. So remember, this attraction is not about drowning her in affection. It is about creating space for polarity to exist. It is about leading with strength so she can lean into softness. It is about giving love from abundance, not begging for it from emptiness. Closing line. Stop being the fan who worships from the sidelines. Start being the man who creates polarity. Because when you hold your frame, you don't just win her attention, you win her desire. One of the clearest differences between men who struggle with women and men who thrive with them comes down to this: approval versus respect. Nice guys are trapped in the game of approval. Every word, every gesture, every decision they make is filtered through one question: will she like me if I do this? It's a constant performance, an endless audition for her validation. And what they don't realize is that this very performance destroys attraction, because no woman is inspired by a man who doesn't even trust his own worth. When you play for approval, you make yourself smaller, you silence your opinions, you avoid confrontation, you compliment excessively, you laugh at jokes that aren't funny. You say yes when you mean no. In other words, you betray yourself in order to be liked. And every time you betray yourself, you chip away at your own masculinity. Because masculinity is not about being aggressive or dominant. It is about being authentic, standing in your truth, and refusing to shrink for anyone. Approval seeking is the opposite of that. It's self-erasure disguised as kindness. Women feel this instantly. They may not say it, but they sense it. They sense when a man is bending himself into a shape that doesn't belong to him. They sense when his smile is fake, when his compliments are hollow, when his patience is forced. And what happens when they sense it? They lose respect. And once respect is gone, attraction follows it straight out the door. Respect, on the other hand, is magnetic. When a man plays for respect, he doesn't ask himself, will she like me? He asks himself, am I honoring who I am? Am I living in alignment with my values? Respect is not about arrogance or ego. It's about integrity. It's about living in such a way that you command recognition without begging for it. A man who plays for respect does not need a woman's approval to validate him. He is already validated by his own actions, his own standards, his own mission. And paradoxically, that is what makes women admire him. There's a philosophical depth to this that's worth unpacking. Approval is external, respect is internal. The man who plays for approval is chained to the outside world. His emotions rise and fall with the responses he gets from women. If she texts him back, he feels high. If she ignores him, he crashes. His worth is a puppet pulled by the strings of other people's opinions. But the man who plays for respect is free. His emotions are grounded in his own choices, his own direction, his own self-respect. He doesn't beg for validation because his validation is self-generated, and freedom is always more attractive than dependence. Psychologically, women are drawn to men they can look up to, not because they need someone above them, but because they want to feel inspired, challenged, elevated. They want a man who has something to teach them, something to show them, something to protect them from. Approval-seeking men cannot offer this because they are too busy following. A leader does not follow. A leader sets the tone, defines the frame, and invites others to step into it. That is what women crave, not a man who dances to her tune, but a man whose rhythm is so strong that she wants to dance with him. Let me give you an example. Imagine a woman asks her man where they should go for dinner. The approval-seeking man says, "Anywhere you want, I don't mind." It seems polite, but what does it really communicate? Indecision, weakness, fear of making the wrong choice. The respect-driven man, on the other hand, says, "Let's try that new Italian place downtown." He makes a decision, he leads. And guess what? Even if she disagrees, even if she says she prefers sushi, she feels something different. She feels his strength. She feels that he is not afraid to make a choice. That small difference creates respect, and respect fuels attraction. Another layer to this is honesty. Approval-seeking men avoid honesty if it risks disapproval. They won't say what they really think. They won't express what they truly want. They hide behind smiles and nods, hoping that silence will buy them love. But it doesn't. Love cannot grow where truth is absent. Respect cannot grow where courage is missing. A man who can say, "I disagree," or "that doesn't work for me," without fear of rejection, that man will always be more attractive than the man who nods along just to be liked. Women don't fall for men who try to please them. They fall for men who challenge them, who stretch them, who make them rise higher. They fall for men they can admire, not men they can control. Approval-seeking hands her the control and says, "Please don't leave me." Respect-driven masculinity looks her in the eye and says, "This is who I am. You can stay or you can go, but I will remain." And that energy is irresistible. So here's the truth: nice guys don't fail because they are kind. They fail because their kindness is rooted in fear, not strength. They are playing for approval, and approval is the lowest form of currency in the world of attraction. Real men, men who are respected, never beg for likes. They live in such a way that their presence demands respect. And women respond to that, not because they want arrogance, but because they crave the strength of authenticity. Closing line: stop auditioning for her approval. Start living for your own respect. Because when you respect yourself, she has no choice but to follow your lead. There's a fundamental misunderstanding at the heart of this whole conversation. When people say hot women, hatey, nice guys, it's not the kindness they hate. It's the weakness that hides underneath it. And that distinction changes everything. Women don't look at generosity, patience, or warmth and recoil. They recoil at cowardice, at insecurity, at a man who masks his fear of rejection behind endless smiles and polite gestures. What they hate is not niceness. It is the hollow imitation of niceness that comes from a man who refuses to stand in his own strength. Let's be clear. True kindness is rooted in power. It takes strength to be kind when you could be cruel. It takes confidence to give without expecting anything in return. It takes self-respect to be generous without being exploited. That kind of kindness is deeply attractive. It commands admiration because it flows from abundance, not desperation. But when kindness is a strategy, when it is used as a bargaining chip to secure love, attention, or intimacy, it ceases to be kindness at all. It becomes manipulation. And women sense the manipulation immediately. Think about the energy behind a man's actions. When a man opens the door for a woman because he values courtesy, she feels respect. When a man opens the door because he's hoping it will earn him affection, she feels the transaction. And that difference, though subtle, is everything. One action says, "I know who I am." The other says, "Please tell me I'm worthy." The first creates respect. The second destroys it. This is why so many men are confused. They think women are rejecting their kindness, when in reality women are rejecting their lack of backbone. Weakness is repelling, not because women are cruel, but because weakness cannot protect, cannot inspire, cannot lead. A woman knows that if a man cannot stand up for himself, he will not be able to stand up for her. If he cannot hold his own ground, he cannot hold a relationship together. And if his entire identity is built on not rocking the boat, then eventually she will sink the ship herself, because no woman wants to be the captain when she desires to rest in the security of a captain's leadership. Philosophically, this boils down to the difference between being agreeable and being authentic. Agreeableness, when it comes from fear, is a denial of reality. It is a man saying yes to things that violate his truth. Authenticity, on the other hand, may include kindness, but it never abandons integrity. A truly authentic man can say no without guilt, yes without expectation, and love without fear of losing himself. That is strength. And women are drawn to it with a kind of instinctual certainty, because on some level they know their survival, their emotional safety, their children's future all depend on a man's ability to embody that strength. There's also a psychological paradox here. The nice guy often believes that if he avoids conflict, avoids rejection, avoids discomfort, he will eventually be rewarded. But what actually happens is the opposite. By avoiding tension, he creates resentment. By avoiding rejection, he creates disinterest. By avoiding discomfort, he creates boredom. A relationship without friction is a relationship without fire. And fire is what keeps attraction alive. Women don't want a man who never challenges them. They want a man who challenges them in a way that makes them grow, while simultaneously making them feel secure. Weakness cannot provide either. This is why women sometimes say they are attracted to bad boys. It's not the cruelty they're drawn to. It's the strength, the unapologetic presence, the refusal to be a doormat. Unfortunately, many men mistake that for permission to be toxic, but toxicity is not the answer. The real answer is to embody strength and kindness together, to be firm in boundaries but soft in compassion, to be capable of saying no without being hostile and capable of saying yes without being needy. That balance is what creates deep attraction. The truth is, women don't hate nice guys. They hate the counterfeit version of niceness that is built on fear. They hate the dishonesty of a man who hides behind politeness instead of showing up as his full self. They hate the dependency of a man who puts her on a pedestal and abandons his own life mission. And they hate the emptiness of a man who thinks love can be bought with good behavior. Real niceness rooted in strength is not only respected, it is cherished. So here's the challenge for men: stop using kindness as a mask. Stop pretending that self-abandonment is love. Stop believing that being agreeable is the same as being valuable. Women want men who bring kindness from a place of self-respect, not self-erasure. They want men who can be generous without losing their edge, supportive without being submissive, compassionate without being cowardly. That kind of man is rare, which is why he is irresistible. And the irony is that once you embody that kind of strength, you don't even worry about whether women like you or not. You stop living for their approval and start living in your truth. And that's when everything changes. Because the moment you stop needing her validation is the moment she starts giving it freely. Closing line: women don't reject kindness, they reject weakness. If your kindness flows from strength, you'll never be invisible again.